I'm Coach Michelle. Today I'm going to teach you how to make one of my very favorite food things in the world, and that is pemmican. You've probably heard of pemmican back when you were a kid. There's stories about how Native Americans used pemmican and explorers used pemmican so they could travel and take food with them. And pemmican is great, a great way to have pre-made food, and it's just easy to take. It doesn't need refrigeration. But there's another side to pemmican that makes it especially delightful to me, and that is it has a really great texture. And for someone who, like myself or you, has been off of processed food for a long time, it can make a really satisfying treat because it's really crunchy and has a great texture. Okay, so I'm gonna briefly mention the Carnivore bar. Go to carnivorebar.com if you want to find out more about it. They are putting out an amazing product. It's just beef tallow, and you can get it with salt, without salt. You can choose to have your beef be grain finished or grass finished, and it is just a really good bar at a really good price. It doesn't have any extras in it. Okay, you are probably seeing more and more about how to make pemmican out there nowadays, and I want to briefly mention two other places that have recipes that are nice. The Carnivore cookbook has a great recipe. So if you go to Primal Edge Health, you can see how to order their cookbook, but their pemmican recipe is nice. I've made this one, and they include several organ meats, as well as some kind of muscle meat. Maria Emmerich and Craig Emmerich have, in the Carnivore cookbook, put together a recipe for pemmican, and in their recipe, they're using beef roast and tallow and salt. So those are two great cookbooks that I highly recommend that you put into your collection, and I'm not sponsored by either of them. Okay, but today I'm going to teach you the recipe that I learned from Amber O'Hearn, and I love it. So what you're going to need is some jerky, and we'll link to the video we've made about how we make jerky after it gets released. You're going to need a good source of fat, and I prefer tallow. So here is my homemade tallow, and we'll be making a video about how you can make tallow at home. Any good butcher shop, and nowadays a lot of grocery stores will have tallow for sale, and you can certainly use that. The key ingredient is you're going to want to get half fat and half meat. Now when you may remember when you've made your jerky, your meat has been dehydrated and it's lost about 2/3 of its weight. So it's a really, really dense source of protein now and meat. So what you want to do is literally weigh out some meat, and I use my scale here so I can get this right. There's two things I want to do to this meat. I want to weigh it so I know how much there is, so I know how much fat to use. But I also want to grind it really fine. So after you get to the weight that you want, let's choose, I'm going to do 1/2 pound here. Okay, got 1/2 pound. Then I am going to put the blade into my food processor, and I tried using my Vitamix. I really prefer the food processor. The food processor. It's easier to use and it's easier to clean, and it just does a better job quicker. I typically do small batches. So take a look. You still see a bunch of big chunks. So I'm going to keep going. Okay, take a look. This would work. I could turn this into pemmican for sure. I'm going to run this one a little more because I do like it sometimes chunky and then sometimes really fine. I've made both kinds. They're both delicious. Okay, for me this is fine enough. I love it when it's this texture. You are welcome to make it into a finer texture if that's what you desire. One trick to doing this would be to simply use a screen and shake out the smaller bits. Keep processing the larger chunks till it's all really fine. So I will just continue this process until I have ground all of my meat. Okay, so you have your ½ pound of ground up jerky, and now you need ½ pound of fat. So let's see. I have more than ½ pound here, so I'm going to cut it up. I like to slice up my tallow so it melts more quickly and evenly. While you're cutting up the tallow, you could be preheating your pot that you're going to melt it in. I'm going to have this on a low. I don't want to burn my tallow. It'd be hard to burn it, but I don't want to melt it ridiculously fast. So I'm going to just let this pot heat up for a few seconds. With your melted fat, your melted tallow, mix it with your meat. Now, you can see my tallow is very chunky. Again, you can make yours less chunky just by grinding the meat longer. Okay, now I am ready to fill my cookie cutter. You've noticed I put a piece of parchment paper down. That'll make it easier to clean up. And I'm just going to spoon in my pemmican. And I want to make sure that I pack it. Okay. And you just pull up your cookie cutter and move on to your next one. The other strategy that you can use is to make pemmican bars, and this is much quicker and easier. Just line a pan with parchment paper, put in your pemmican mix, flatten it down, and let it cool. Another way to make pemmican bars is to put it in silicone mold. In this, it'll take 2 or 3 hours to cool completely and get hard, and we'll show you what that looks like when it's ready. So after the pemmican has cooled, I cover it in tinfoil so our cats won't get it. You can cut it into bars, like so. And I just make it into little squares. And I usually put them in like a glass container for storage. You can also put them in wax paper or store them any way you want. They should store, I've had them store for months. I usually eat them before that, but they'll store for a very long time just at room temperature. I also did the molds, so you can see you just pop those out and you have little pemmicans, or here's the hearts in the silicone molds, are the stars. There's what the cookie cutters look like when they're done. Here's one of the cookie cutters. Here's a little fish cookie cutter. And here's the cowgirl hat cookie cutter pemmican. So there you have it.